We are so excited to be in conversation. I think this film is so much about how we are indeed all in this together. And so I actually don't want to take up too much of the airtime because we are all here in conversation together. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to ask just a couple of introductory questions on things that resonated for me and for us about the film, and what I thought will give you more context about how this film was made and the impact that it's already having and the impact that it can continue to have with your support. And then I'm going to open it up to you all for questions that you have. Now, I got to tell you, my journey of having a practice of compassion just started with this film. So it is... what I'm trying to say is my compassion for questions that are not questions is still limited. I have not made enough progress in my journey of compassion for statements that take 3 minutes long. we don't have time for that. And so I'm going to do my best to take the learnings from this film to not cut you off. And I hope you do also your best to make sure that we're sharing space with everybody here. And with that, I think, Richard, I wanted to start with you because we were having a conversation about the way in which the film beautifully weaves the discussions about self with discussions about compassion, with discussions about the purpose of life being joyfulness, and then it brings it into how that is fundamental for a practice about large-scale social transformation. And because we're in a room full of change makers, where sometimes we forget that we shouldn't be in competition too much. Sometimes we center too much in ego. Sometimes we end up in the midst of tripping each other up rather than working together. I was wondering what message you think that this film brings to people that feel so called to respond to today's challenges.
Well, as His Holiness says, we have one purpose here, and that is to be happy. No other purpose. And we can define that in many different ways, obviously. We can eat a piece of chocolate and we can say, I'm happy. But I can see the people in this room are aiming higher than that. To the degree that we can make ourselves smaller, we make our world larger. And I think that's in the work that we try to do. If we can make ourselves the last one in line and really motivate ourselves from a profound place to be of service to others and to the larger vision of possibility, which is His Holiness, every breath of his life is that. He's so saturated with that. He can't do anything other than that, but thinking about others. And as you see with his life, grew up on a farm in Amdo, and as a 90-year-old man now, the extraordinary impact he has had on the world because of the purity of his motivation, but also the hard work he's done on himself. Is that these negative emotions that His Holiness talks about, they don't go away by themselves. They don't go away by themselves. You have to work at it. And this is someone who still is getting up at 3:30 in the morning to do his practice, still working on himself. Every moment working on himself. We were just, Tencho and I were about a month ago, we were in Dharamsala and saw His Holiness. And he's a 90-year-old man. And he has the body of a 90-year-old man, and he has the problems of a 90-year-old man. But 3 days a week, he spends 3 to 4 hours meeting 500 people and blessing them, and spending time with each one, engaging, making their lives better, opening them up to the possibilities of joy and transcendence. It doesn't come out of nowhere. It's a work. It's if you want to play piano, you got to practice. So here's a master pianist who spent all of this lifetime and previous lifetimes purifying his mind and his heart and his motivation. So The least that I find in my own life is when I get up in the morning and try to purify my own motivation and use that as the ground level to start the day and my encounters with other people, which, of course, all those things come up. Anger comes up, jealousy comes up, frustration comes up, lack of patience comes up, all that stuff that all of us in this room feel. But we're able to process it in a completely different way because of the motivation that we set to begin our day of encounters. Not only for our own purification, but to say, let's make this day meaningful. Let's make every encounter as meaningful as we possibly can. I can go on, but I won't.
And there is such a connection that the film makes between living life in the pursuit of joyfulness and what sometimes it reminded me of what in social movement history sometimes people refer to as joy being a revolution. And I think it perhaps is a good segue, Tencho, to ask about the work that you're leading. And just so everyone has the full context, Tencho leads incredible work at ICT, which I'll speak about more. But your practice is also personal in that it comes from both your lived experience, but also your family's lived experience. You are His Holiness niece, and your mother is also an incredible activist. And so I am curious, Tencho, about the connection that you see between the film and the work that you're leading and the transformations that you're leading at ICT.
Thank you. And such a joy to be with all of you here. My first time in Oxford that I've read and seen so many. So it's wonderful to be here. Blue skies and the wisteria growing everywhere. First time for Richard Gere also. Yeah. And so I serve as president of International Campaign for Tibet. And we are lucky that the chairman of the board of directors is Mr. Gere himself. And this is an organization that was built by people who were close to His Holiness and who cared about him and who were touched by his message. And it serves to advocate for the people of Tibet. So that's what we do. We advocate politically in capitals around the world for political advocacy for Tibet. And the journey along with this film is we were started almost 35 years ago at a time when His Holiness was traveling around the world, and his message was there. He was meeting leaders, and he was speaking to people of all generations and ages and universities and politicians and everywhere. But today he doesn't. He's 90 years old. He's not traveling as he used to. So the film really, I think it captures His Holiness, and it gives you a feeling of sitting in front of him directly, listening to him for an hour and a half and getting that kind of wisdom that he used to bring. So I think for us, it is a really important gift, not only for viewers around the world, but especially for his people inside Tibet, who will not be able to see this film, who have not yet been able to see this film. And my dream is one day that it'll be screened on a large screen in Tibet, and they would be able to see and learn about this man who they pray for every day and think of every day.
Beautiful.
You have to understand, the village of Dharamsala, which is in the film, where His Holiness is. Tencho was born there and grew up there. So this is her. This is her heart, and deep in the marrow of her bones and everything about her. So it's very special to have her here.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We're so happy that you're here. Before we open it up to the audience, I wanted to ask you, and you were speaking a little bit about this already, Tencho, but I wanted to ask you both, why film? Because there's a lot of conversations in this space about film and storytelling as a pathway towards mutual understanding, towards connection across difference, towards debating the things that we don't have other spaces to debate. And so in a society that's become so polarized, and at a time in which His Holiness is calling for this century to be the century of compassion and peace, why is storytelling and why is film so important? Why did you want to make a film?
The first thing I want to say is that you sat here in the dark watching this film on a pretty big screen. Your egos were very small. That's the way to see this film. I know people see it, that you saw it on your laptop.
Yeah.
And there's a power to that. But there's something else. And as someone, my whole life has been making movies, there's something powerful about that movie experience of being in the dark with strangers. Our habits are not there. Your favorite chair is not there. Your coffee mug is not there, although I take mine with me all the time. But there's a common denominator of openness. Now, it happened in the old days in the theater. You know, the first things that the Greeks did when they conquered a new city was to build a theater. Mm-hmm. The theater is important to us. And part of it is that, having a communal experience where you drop the idea of yourself. In this case, an hour and a half of dropping the idea of yourself and being in direct presence with a genuinely wise and compassionate person. It's rare. And it gets deeper because of the nature of the experience itself. So that's why I say, why movies? Yes. Specifically this one, I'd known this was being made, and I'm always a little skeptical because I've seen 100 movies about His Holiness, which are often very, very good, but they're usually not as deep as I would want them to be, or as understanding. People fall in love with His Holiness, and of course they want to make a movie about him. So I was a little skeptical, and actually Tencho had been aware of this movie, and there was a certain point she said, "Richard, I think it's time for you to see this." And I had known Manuel Bauer, who was the cinematographer on this. He's a still photographer that's been around His Holiness for 20 years, maybe more, who we all know, very quiet, but kind of brilliant, and his still shots were brilliant. He'd never shot on film or video before. So I thought, well, okay, I didn't know the other Swiss filmmakers. And I saw this cut in New York with my wife. My wife was in tears. We were all very moved. I admired it a lot, and especially this footage of directly into the eyes of His Holiness, which never happened before and will never happen again. This is it. And it was a technique that came from Errol Morris, actually, who's a documentary filmmaker.
Yeah, of course.
And where there's a series of mirrors, basically. And he's actually talking to Barbara, the filmmaker, but she's off to the side. There's a mirror, and he's looking directly into the lens at us. Mm-hmm. So he's making a direct communication, not to a piece of glass, but he's talking to Barbara. And Barbara is our proxy in the situation. So I said, look, this is extraordinary. I think we can work on the rest of it. I think there's more archival footage that hasn't been seen. And that's a whole nother story of it had been found literally a few weeks before I got involved. And no one knew what it was. It was negatives that had never been printed before. It was found in Dharamsala. So we printed it up, all that footage in the snow, that incredible footage is this young rock star Dalai Lama and playing in the snow with friends and family. Those sequences were brand new. No one had ever seen that before. And I brought in my friend Oren Moverman, who I've made 6 films with, and we re-edited and rejiggered and put in other composers' work specifically for the film. Ariel Marx did an incredible job on the score here. So we got it to the point where we felt like this was something very, very, very special.
That's fantastic. I'm mindful of time, so I want to open it up. And so, yes, I see a hand, I see you over there, and then I'm going to come back here. And then I'm going to ask you to be as succinct as you can.
Thank you very much. Is this on?
Yes.
I had the pleasure of meeting His Holiness when he visited the Baha'i World Center almost 3 decades ago. And it's very much felt like I was in his presence again. So thank you very much for bringing him to us. During the film, he made a statement that really touched me as someone who's a human rights law advocate. He said that the future is female. And I can tell you from my years of work that I'm really concerned about our future, because there's an awful lot of emphasis on empowerment of women, and I really appreciate that as a woman. But I see a real problem with the decline of partnership between women and men. And how are we going to realize, what do you think? You know, the three of you who are so close to him, how are we going to ensure that the equality of women and men as two wings of the same bird remains in place, so that the bird of the human family can continue to fly towards the apex of prosperity?
Thank you. I'm going to just take another one right here.
I'm from India, the land of His Holiness. I am a medical doctor by profession and also a person with disability. And with the lived experience of both, I have seen that often compassion coexists with paternalism, often with the vulnerable communities like refugees and disabled people. My question is, beyond sensitization, how can compassion translate into enforceable rights and accountability?
I mean, these are vast questions. Just a quick version of what you were presenting up there. Look, if we see ourselves superficially as men and women, we're never going to get anywhere, obviously. If we look deeper and into that relationship and go into the area of sexual attraction even, if we find a more profound way of dealing with the male and female energies, look from a Buddhist point of view and especially Tibetan point of view, the male point of view, the male energy is compassion. It's the action in the world. It's flip of what you would think. Women represent wisdom. The wisdom realizing emptiness, that everything lacks empty. It's empty of inherent existence. That's the ultimate wisdom, is that basic fact. So if women are that emptiness, that extraordinary wisdom that is the mother of the action of compassion, the engaging of the world and each other, and is viewed that way, even in its sexual congress, you're seeing those two wings creating a bird that flies. But if you just think, okay, it's a male body and a female body. You know, one is stronger than the other physically, one is maybe more emotional than the other. I mean, it's just so superficial. So the profundity that we can bring into these all of our relationships, and not deal with the surface of things, that's the future that will be a happy one.
And Tencho, on that point, His Holiness speaks about female leadership and the qualities of female leadership and the potential of Dalai Lama, who is a woman. I'm curious that question and that reflection, any reactions that generates for you?
His Holiness has been one of the most open. I think he grew up with very strong women in his family. His mother, who was just from a farming community, who didn't know how to read and write, but she made a huge impact on him, not only on him, but all his other siblings. And the Tibetan community, the whole community adored her and loved her, and she attain that stature. So I think with that kind of backing, he always looked to people as individuals. And within the Tibetan exile community where I grew up in Dharamsala, in the heart of the community. There was also always a sense of, in the schools, boys and girls are treated equal in leadership. When His Holiness started he democratized the whole exiled Tibetan government and structure. And in that democratization, he placed seats for women, encouraging women to take a role in that. And now we have more women in the parliament than we have seats allocated for women. So that's a sign that's very positive. And then in the religious tradition, the lineage of Tibetan nuns getting the highest geshe degree had been broken. And in the Tibetan tradition, the lineage, the continuation of the lineage is very important. And His Holiness talked to all the different lineages and created a space which only he could have done, and that allowed for Tibetan women to reinstate that lineage and be able to even attain this highest degree in Buddhist studies. And
It's like a doctorate degree.
Yeah. And Tencho, on the second question, how do we think about compassion, understanding it both as the film describes as a belief that we deserve joy, and that if we deserve joy, others deserve joy, and so that it is a practice of caring for others, not because we're looking down on others, which is, if I take it your question, not because we see someone else necessarily as like someone that we need to help because they have less, but because we see all of us as deserving of mutual care and care for others. How do we then turn compassion into protection of rights and greater accountability?
I think Richard will be better equipped to answer that, but I always think of how His Holiness says we need a transformation of our education system. His Holiness talks about, how we take care of our health. We wake up and we brush our teeth and we take a shower, we do that, but that's all taught to us. And he says, as you teach yourselves to be healthy, you have to teach people to be healthy in the mind as well as outside. So he's created this whole curriculum of C-learning that he calls social, emotional, ethical learning that teaches from kindergarten up onwards how to be a better person that takes care of others, and in serving others that you gain happiness yourself, and being how connected everybody is, and that's the type of education, he says, has to be done along with everything else.
Yeah, this is very powerful, by the way. If you go online, you can find this C education, and it's I don't know how many countries now, but it's a vast number of countries are starting to adopt this. Even in my community in Connecticut, we're introducing these ideas in primary education, but all the way through. It's very powerful. And it was developed in partnership with Emory University. Over many, many years, this has been going on. The idea of compassion, everyone is redeemable. Everybody, certainly from the Buddhistic point of view. The enemies are ignorance, primarily, hatred, jealousy, all of that. Those are the enemies. If we can see with pure vision that each of us ultimately is this pure, loving child who has this illness, this ignorance that has caused all these problems, so they behave badly. The point is we can help them remove the illness. We can be a doctor for them. And once that's removed, there's no need to feel badly about them. It's anger that we hate. It's the jealousy that we hate. It's the basic ignorance of who we are and what we are as individuals and communities that we hate. And we are committed to transform, destroy. But ultimately, there's no need to hold anything against anyone once the disease is gone. It doesn't mean you forget. We were talking about President Santos today.
Yeah.
And the Truth and Reconciliation that
in my country,
it's
Colombia.
happened in Colombia.
Yeah.
You don't forget, but the forgiveness in the process of truth and reconciliation is so powerful. The forgiveness allows the bad guy to acknowledge what he's done when it's true and genuine. And the community's healed within that. You don't forget. How could you possibly forget? Mm-hmm. It's the healing we're looking for.
The challenge with this beautiful film is that it elicits so many conversations that would take such a long time, and we got to get many of you, including the two of them, to the award ceremony. So we need to bring this to an end. I'm going to ask you to stay seated, please, as they exit. But Tencho, just if people want to spread the word on the impact campaign, on the film, how can we make sure that others outside of this room can access this work? Or Richard?
Yeah, look, we're just doing the layout of the film now. We're trying to figure out what to do with it because we're having very specific screenings. I think we're going to make it available in September for anyone who wants it, pay per view, and then probably streamers right after that. So, I mean, if anyone wants you to show your community or a family member, let us know and we'll find a way that you can see it.
They do want that. Great.
So we'll find a way that you can do it. But I want to say a final thing. One of the reasons I came to this Skoll event, and I met Jeffrey years ago. We did something in the West Bank together. I mean, it was probably 20 years ago we were doing something. You are overachievers here. This is a room full of alpha people. And you can be really annoying. Like I can be really annoying because we want things the way we want them. And we think we know better. And sometimes we do. But you're a group of people who can change the world. And if you find a way to work together, we all have different strengths, all of us. There's nothing we encounter in our lives that we don't rely on others. Nothing. The clothes we wear, the car we drive, the food we eat, there's nothing we do completely on our own. Nothing. So here's a group of master weavers and master car makers and masters in whatever the areas that you're trying to do good works. But if we come from a similar high motivation, what this holiness talks about, bodhicitta, this really a sense of universal responsibility, that is the meaning of our lives. Now, we all play with that a little bit, and we feel good when we help people, and we have organizations. Everybody here has an organization. You're doing good things in the world. If we stick together and actually make that vision even more vast and really understand there's no other reason for us to incarnate, to be alive in this world, but to help each other. If we really come from that place, the big vision can happen. So let's find these partnerships. Let's keep talking to each other and find a way to bring our expertise together and radically change this world that is so messed up right now.
Well, that seems like a great place to start. Thank you to the Skoll Foundation, the team at Caspian. Please, to everyone at the theater, and thank you for the gift of this film, to His Holiness for his teachings, and to all of you for being in conversation with us. Very much appreciated.